Hi, nice intro. Thanks. So, I'm Agnes. You already know that. I'm from Europe, Hungary. It's really far away. Um, and I'm gonna do some functional thinking today. So, a lot of feelings. Um, so, as Chris mentioned, I work at Prezi. I'm a Mac developer. And at Prezi, we are having a lot of fun because a lot of the teams are doing functional and reactive programming. We have a team of Haskell. We have developed inside the company. So, and the most important one is for me is Reactive Cocoa because we have all this Mac app written in Objective-C and Reactive Cocoa. About a year ago, I stared at thousands of lines of code with Reactive Cocoa for the first time in my life, and it was pretty shocking. But ever since I'm trying to learn it and getting used to it, and I think I'm at a point where I can say it's beautiful and I love it. And Reactive Cocoa also made me realize that I can write code differently than I learned in the university. Where it all comes from searching the right way of doing things. It's like when you grew up, finish your studies, you get a CS degree, and you are trying to figure out which platform should I work on, what language fits me the best. So, and if you are there and you know what's the right thing to do, you still don't know how to code right. So here I am doing Mac and iOS, and now we have all this big freedom we didn't have in the past. I'm especially with Swift, so we have a great community. It's really growing. Everything's moving fast. It's really fascinating. And when you are starting out a new project, you might think about these decisions. If I should choose Objective-C or can I choose Swift now? We have MVC and MVVM pattern to use. We can write imperative code with MVC, which is perfectly fine, as a great guy told me yesterday. So, but if you think it's not the right way for you, you can choose to write declarative code and use MVVM, for example. And this is my way of trying to do coding right, functional and reactive approaches. Even I'm coming from a huge Reactive Cocoa code base, and it's Swift. We have a lot of great features now built into the language itself, which is great. So we have, for example, built-in operators, and you don't have to pull in a huge framework or write it yourself anymore. And everything is so easy to expand. Great. And reactive. Reactive is the way of coding when you have streams of your values and all your code is about your data. Combining these two, you can have streams that are basically collections of your immutable values, possibly immutable values, I hope immutable values, and you can apply functional operators on it. So it's just make it a lot easier. And if you aim for immutability and you try to write pure functions, all of these combined result in a declarative style code, probably less errors and much easier with concurrency. I know it all sounds good, and I know probably there are some people who might ask, okay, but how does it look like in practice? So I wrote this app, the Vivo app. It's basically the of the baseboard items of the OS, it's because I always forget to paste the thing I'm just copied and overwrite it with something else, and I have to go back all the time. So I was thinking, why not writing this app? Oh, I don't know my own product. So I wanted to show you because it's just this basic, but I'm planning to implement search and P4 for instance. So I can have an infinite list of my baseboard items. Yay! Okay, that's it. And the hidden agenda was to Swift, of course, because I'm learning Swift and I really love to use it every day. Hopefully, this time will come. And I wanted to write a sensible test coverage because something not written in stone yet, and I think people is trying to figure out what's the most efficient way of writing tests and what to cover. And the most important thing is to enjoy coding. So I mentioned MVVM. I went with MVVM, so I have a model of these baseboard items, a view and a controller merged in. It's just this list, and the view model containing reactive bindings. Reactive. I mentioned for some of you already that I tried out this framework called WinSRP, which is developed by my friend at Resi. And he convinced me to give it a try and not to use reactive Cocoa all the time, which is great, but yeah. So it's not a reactive extension. It's about being the easiest to use. So if somebody wants to try out reactive programming and not aware of the reactive extension API, reactive Cocoa, they might find it too complex. So it's really just easy. My service of getting the items from the OS. So this WinSRP looks like this in practice. You just initiate a reactive stream, and this is where I'm pushing the items manually in it. I will explain later. And yeah, it's just this easy. And it looks like this when you are using some UIKit bindings. So it's just mapping the number of items to a label. So the basic idea was when I designed this app to make it a network of boxes. Boxes in the sense of something which hides complexity. And inside the box, a box has an input and an output. And in this example, I had this NS baseboard, which is the class for the baseboard items. And the output is a reactive stream of items from the baseboard. So you might think the complexity it hides can be just binding, but no, it's actually not KBO compliant, this task. So I had to pull the baseboard API in every second. I'm not really proud of that, but it's pretty sure something to hide. So yeah, it's like if you design your app this way, it can be much better with tests. So it's just a simple test I added to my service. So you can write tests for view models, the service, and the model. It's really straightforward. But if you we use this idea of functional programming, for example, the pure functions, you can write lot easier. You can write tests a lot easier for these boxes I mentioned. So it's like these boxes shouldn't be in your application code, or it's not necessary. In this example, it's in my test. So it doesn't exist in the code. There are a few functions working together on this polling stuff, and it appears in my test. So that defines the module. And the key is, I suggest to, if you are starting out with functional or reactive programming, I think it's really important not to overdo any of this, because you might end up making your code more difficult, which I tried, and it's ended up in a huge refactor. So yeah, and even more important is to enjoy coding and find your way of coding that fits you the best. And I have this app on GitHub, so if you are interested or like to contribute some boxes, then just hit it up. Thanks, and my friends helping me with all this.
Are there any questions?
Can you talk a little bit more about the difference between VinceRP and RX?
Task for this, and it's because I started out with reactive code, so it's a lot different.
Okay, then about the difference between VinceRP and Reactive Cocoa. Then I don't really know what the difference between RX and Reactive Cocoa is myself. So
Okay, so VinceRP just simplifies all things like separating for them off signals, or everything about this logic is like behind the scenes, so it's not really complex in the user level. So it's really basic. It doesn't know the same as Reactive Cocoa, of course, but it aims for like an easy user experience. So you define a reactive variable, and you can just observe it. You can push it everywhere. You can by using it with an operator, and basically that's all. And it's 100% Swift. So if you are trying to pull in Reactive Cocoa, that contains a lot of code too.
Any more questions? I have a question. Like, if you would do a new project, what would you start with? Which library?
RX for sure. I'd like to try out Reactive extensions.
So it's been a while since I've looked at Reactive Cocoa, and it seemed like at the time, this might have been version 1, that you can lose a lot of Objective-C's version of type safety with it. And I'm curious if that's still the case with newer versions or other libraries and frameworks that you've checked out, and in particular, how that works with Swift, given that it's very type safe.
I think with the new Swift API, it's not the case. I'm not really sure I got the question right, but I did.
Cool. Let's continue. Thanks.